Well, today is December 26th, 2024, and it's 4:12 and almost dark. It was a cloudy day, so that's why it's so dark out right now. It stayed a little lighter last night, but it was more of a clearer day. Anyway, I was going to tell you this story about this bull I had, uh, and I had to put a ring in his nose. So anyway, I bought this bull. He was 4 or 5 years old, and I brought him home and I turned him loose, and I didn't have any trouble with him, And I didn't have very many cows. I only had like 8 or 10 cows, something like that. And he stayed at the house for about 6 months, no problem. And just one day he was gone, So I started calling around and asking people and stuff, And I had these people that they lived kind of beside me. Their driveway was, not too far from my house, maybe a couple hundred yards or something. But it went back like a half a mile before most of their land actually opened up. So most of the property was back behind my property. So anyway, they said they had the bull that was down there at their house. And they wasn't in no rush or nothing, And I said, well, I'll come over and get it in a day or two. And I think they had sold their bull and they were needing a bull. And they said, oh, we'll give you $600 for your bull. And I go, man, I give $1,000 for that bull. And they said, well, we'll give you $700. That's all we got. I go, no. I'll be over in a day or two and check it out. So I went to town and I bought me a piece of chain and about 6 foot piece of chain and a ring that you put in a bull's nose. And I went by the veterinarian's office and I picked up a dart gun and a dart. So I go home and, I don't even think I really even had a plan. I thought, well, I'll just take the dart gun with me, and I'd go down there and see if I could even find the bull. Well, so I take off behind my property and I cut cross country across and get down there. They were like pretty close down on the river, down in some lower grounds, and I get down there and I find my bull, and I try to kind of separate him from theirs, I first tried to push him on towards their house because they had an old corral down there. He didn't want to be pushed around. He'd throw his head around and dip it down, and kind of hop around, being all frisky and stuff, And he didn't mind. He wasn't afraid of me, but those old cows, they didn't know me, and so they were kind of hesitant and wouldn't let me get real close to them. I thought, well, that's just going to be a mess trying to get him in there and trying to get him in that corral, And I was kind of getting aggravated about the situation, and I had that dart gun. I thought, well, I'll shoot that bull with that dart gun, just see what he does. Maybe if I get him all messed up, maybe I can get him back down in there. I didn't know. So I shoot this old bull, and I'm not that far away from him, like 15 yards, maybe 10 yards, and that dart drops like 2 foot. And I was aiming for the middle of his ham, so I shot down almost to his knee, way up. It was on his, I call it hock or whatever, on his leg, but down pretty low, And I watched him for a few minutes, and he staggered one time, like he tripped kind of, but he didn't stagger like to fall to the ground, But anyway, he stumbled there a little bit, and I thought, you dirty dog. So I cut him. He was already the cows kind of went away just a little ways, but they were kind of hanging out watching, So anyway, I kind of got between him and the bull, the cows and the bull, and I started throwing rocks at him, And he took off up over the hill, and that was kind of the way back towards the house, So I just kind of followed him. I kept chucking rocks at him, and if I seen a limb along the ground, I'd pick up the limb, I'd throw a limb at him, And I just kept driving him on up, and pretty soon he got up on the ridge, and he started going down that ridge, and he's going right back towards my property, And then I get up there on that when I'm getting him up there pretty close to my fence, maybe 100, 200 yards away or something like that. I think, well, how am I even going to get him on my property? I don't even have a gate. I thought, well, maybe he won't run off. Maybe he'll stand up there once he gets by the cows and I can get some grain or something, and, cut the fence and get him on back on my property, and then fix the fence back up, And so I didn't push him quite as hard, when I was getting up pretty close to my fence, and I backed off just a little bit, see how he'd react. And that old bull, he went right up there to my fence and he hops right over it. Goes right back in the pasture like nothing had happened. Goes to eating grass, So I go to the house and I think about it a little bit. And I thought, well, there's an old boy that's advertising he can catch wild cattle. I'll call that guy and see if I can't get him to come out. He had a horse and and some dogs. And so anyway, I called him, and I also went back to that veterinarian's, and I got another one of those tranquilizer shots. And I told him, I said, man, I hit that bull a little low, and it didn't do nothing to that bull. I chased him all the way home, and it was like 3/4 of a mile or a mile back to my house or back to my property. And so he didn't want to real bad, but he gave it to me. He gave me another tranquilizer, you know. So anyway, I had everything I needed. And next day, little boy comes out. He's got a stock trailer and got some dogs. I said, just leave your dogs in the trailer, because I don't think we're going to need them. You know, that it's just my bull, and he's in the field. He ain't off in the brush somewhere, because this old boy was catching wild cattle. That was his business, you know. Oh, I can catch him, you know. Well, he was just turning these dogs loose on them in the brush, and they'd run them out, you know. So anyway, he goes back there in my field, and I take I had an old Silverado pickup truck, like a 1976 or something, you know. And this was probably like in the year, gosh, probably like 1990 or something like that, you know. And so we go back there, and this little boy, and you know, the old bull's tame. He just hanging out, you know. Well, the old boy, he ropes the bull, you know. Well, that bull about jerked that horse plumb off its feet. That horse was no match to this bull, you know. And it scared that old boy so bad, he turned the bull loose. We call it dally, when you dally the horn of your saddle. Well, he undallied his and let it go. So, and then by then I was like, man, what am I going to do, you know? So I got into that rope, and I tied it on my bumper hitch of my bumper of that Silverado pickup truck. You know, I had a little slack in it from where the bull was standing, because his bull, he didn't know what was going on. You know, he just messing around. And so I take off with that in that Silverado pickup truck, you know, and I get up and I get going, you know, pretty good. But I couldn't go very far, because that bull hit that rope pretty quick, you know. And I spun my truck around, and I slung that old bull out on the ground a little bit too, and he slid a little bit, you know. And he had that rope around his neck. Now we had him all stretched out, you know, and we both jumped on his head and his neck, you know, to keep him from getting back up. Now we shot him with that. And I shot him with that tranquilizer again also. So that, you know, that probably had him a little bit messed up. I took my pocket knife and punched a hole through that cartilage of his nose, and we put that ring in his nose. And the old boy that was helping me, he was shaking so bad. I said, just give me that set screw, you know, in the screwdriver. So I got the set screw going, because you had to put a set screw in that bull ring to lock it closed, you know. So anyway, we got the chain in the ring on that bull's nose, and let the bull up, you know. And from then on, the old bull, he had a whole different, you know, way of going. He learned really fast, though, how to deal with that chain, you know, because at first every once in a while he'd step on it, you know, and he'd stop, you know, and get his foot off of it, because he didn't want to jerk on his own nose, you know. But the funny thing about it was, after that, you know, I kept him for a couple more years. And if I was feeding him hay or something, you know, if I could reach real fast to get hold of that chain, I could lead him around like a dog, you know. And I used to have a couple of pictures of him leading that bull with that chain, you know, in that ring in his nose. Well, I hope you enjoyed the story. Have a good evening.